All students will reconnect to their school community virtually, learn the health and safety procedures, check technical connectivity, and have wellness checks with their teachers and guidance staff. And on September 21st, and this is the first time in the history of New York City Department of Education, when school opening has been moved to a later date, all schools begin full day teaching and learning. And how does that teaching and learning picture look like? It could be remote or in person. A survey was conducted, which was responded to by the parents. And I know a lot of parents, almost 50%, opted for remote instruction. There are also families who opted for in person for the reason that they don't have child care, and most of those who responded that they prefer in person are those families who have children who have to go to the early elementary grades and they don't have available child care at home. Or these are families who have children with challenges who really require to avail of in-person related services as mandated by the children's IEP. And that will be happening. The DOE has assured this will happen. This will be supported. So for those who will go in person, 50% of their time will be spent in the building, while 50% will be at home. So group one will be in the building, group two will be at home. Group two then shifts with group one. They will be in the building, and then group one goes to remote. But for the 100% remote, they will stay at home for the whole duration. And most of those parents who opted for full remote are those parents who are afraid of their children getting the virus, and that there's nothing wrong. It is better be safe than sorry. The COVID-19 pandemic and recent attention on long-standing racial injustice, and I think you saw that on TV or social media, and that includes social unrest, have resulted in significant stress, trauma, grief, and loss for our 1.1 million students and their families, as well as our nearly 150,000 educators. These realities require us to plan for a different school opening than previous years, one that centers the humanity and lived experiences of our school communities with a focus on community and resilience. As announced by New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, First Lady McRae, and Chancellor Carranza, the DOE has developed a Bridge to School plan, which will support school leaders in prioritizing the socio-emotional wellness of students and adults. So take note, in the days that are to come in the next 2 weeks, social-emotional learning will be front and center, not only for students, but all staff members. As the New York City Department of Education made a difficult shift to remote learning as a result of COVID-19, young learners needed extra support to keep learning from home. In comes Learn, Let's Learn New York City, a new educational public television program produced jointly by WNet Group and the New York City DOE. Let me emphasize that this happens between 12 to 1 p.m. each weekday. Young children ages 3 to 8 or grades 3 to 3K, grades 3 to K to 2 are tuning in to channel 13 or digitally streaming with their families for high quality programming that reinforces foundational literacy skills and important content knowledge. You would see on the bottom left an actual screenshot of a teacher teaching to very young kids, and it was done via Channel 13. Experts have been tasked to help in the preparation and in the production of videos for the DOE to be able to to broadcast it over Channel 13 or via live streaming. With every episode, thousands of students experience playful learning and joy to support them in being better prepared and motivated to go back to school in the fall. I think everybody heard about No Child Left Behind. This was a law that required all schools that there should be no child left behind. However, in 2015, ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, has become the main law for K-12 public education in the US. It replaced No Child Left Behind. Most schools started seeing the impact of ESSA in the 2017-2018 school year. Let me admit, ESSA is a complex law. It affects all students in public schools. That includes the 1 in 5 kids with learning and thinking differences. Its main purpose is to make sure public schools provide a quality education for all kids. ESSA gives states more of a say in how schools account for student achievement. This includes the achievement of disadvantaged students. And let me also stress this to one and all, that there are more public school students than private schools. Maybe only 10% of school age children are in private schools. Most of our students are in public schools and they're doing great. They're doing so great. My worry is on about equality and equity. With the ongoing pandemic and while school leaders continue to build the plane while flying it, my utmost concern is focused on students who have social, emotional, mental, cognitive, physical challenges, and those who have limited or no access to instructional and learning resources, support and assistance, and related intervention services. Despite the challenges of this moment, the New York City Department of Education Chancellor's 4 organizational priorities remain: accelerate learning and instruction, develop people, partner with communities, advance equity now. On the right portion of the slide, learning platform on the bottom, and of course, out from that would be the blended learning, making use of whatever available learning platforms are there. It could also be on site or in person, or it could be digital or remote. And of course, you have there an overlap between strengthening core instruction, knowing every student well, and that of course should be anchored on, that should inform educators if a student requires mental health support. And of course, that doesn't mean that there's a pandemic, the curriculum is changed. No, there is a use, we still have to use shared and inclusive curriculum. All in all, all in all, would add up for us to create a supportive environment and for us to set rigorous expectations for every student. How can equity be secured when the new literacy landscape has evolved in terms of breadth and depth? Years ago, decades ago, it was all about reading. It was only about basic numeracy when we talk about literacy. But right now, while we are in this discourse, literacy comes in different forms and phases and structure. We now have media literacy, digital literacy, academic literacies, and earlier I mentioned about health literacy. So new literacies require multimodal learning, and there you see the overlap there. And of course, that will equal to a massive information literacy that leads to critical thinking and evaluation. Not forgetting, of course, the 21st century literacy skills that we are mandated to provide and train our students. You are all familiar about this, equality and equity. They are both similar in origins, revolving around fairness and evenness, and it is a matter of a societal system term. You will understand this better visually through this graphic. Equality, it is about sameness, giving everyone the same thing. It only works if everyone starts from the same place. Are you fair to the boy or to the girl? But if we talk about equity, equity is being fair, access to the same opportunities. We must ensure equity before we can enjoy equality. Take note on equality, the same height for the stool, but when we talk about equity, a higher, a, a higher or a higher in measurement for for a tool that must be for a stool to be provided to the girl. That is what we call accommodation, support, intervention. For the girl, short as she is compared to the boy, whatever are her disabilities or her challenges, she will still be able to access the general education curriculum just like her peers. Again, it is about equity. That this pandemic is of course so challenging. How equitable are our resources? How equitable are our approaches when you provide the modular learning modality? How equitable also from our end when we provide the, the remote learning modality, especially those students who have challenges, especially those students who have focusing challenges. Before I close my virtual interface with you, let me share the best visual commercial with literacy as its theme's centerpiece. I will not be, I just cut the later part of the commercial because it is a product for adults and that would not be good for this presentation. But the main gist of this video that I'm sharing with you is because it's so beautiful. It's so inspiring. It's a rare commercial that brings tears to our eyes. Be focused. Have your audio on at its loudest. All eyes on the screen. Why? Because this commercial is all about literacy. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Evening.
Evening.
May I ring that up for you?
Yes, please.
Have a good evening.
Repeat after me. A.
A.
Then
B.
and C.
C.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
No, not good. Not good.
Just the sounds that words make.
Cat, dog,
Calamari. Yeah.
trash, on the beach.
Good.
Farm, fresh. sun and I mowed the grass.
That's a gold star.
Gold star.
Unbelievable.
Dad,
Hey, Tubbs, I read your book.
you read my book.
Inspiring, right? Inspiring. The dad tries, I'm even tearing right now, even though I've seen this commercial for a million times. The dad, who was a non-reader, really had to go back to his roots, learn to read the alphabet, tackled with phonemes, phonetics, fun, just to be able to read his son's book, because that book would just be worthless for a son if he was not able to, it being the father. So I'd like to quote one of my favorite US presidents. That is, of course, Barack Obama. And he said, literacy is the most basic currency of the knowledge economy. Ladies and gentlemen, please put in the chat section your reaction or your reflection after you've watched that video. Thank you very much. Magandang umaga. Naimbag na naimbag na aldaw kada kayo amin. And thank you. And again, my reminder, put your reflection in the chat section. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to Dr. Joey Kalub. Thank you, Dr. Kalub, for sharing with us your presentation and overview of the literacy situation in the United States of America and the latest data in New York City's the best practices in this time of pandemic. And I also like what you said, Dr. Joey, that even with or without pandemic, your work as an education administrator continues. Thank you, Dr. Joey, for that. And now we
Thank you, Ryan.
proceed
Thank you,
with
Dr. Ballesteros, Thea, and everyone, and Jamie. Thank you. Magandang umaga. Daghang salamat. Maing buntag. With love from New York City. And I'll wait for the Q&A. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Joey. Now we proceed to the next presenter. So Mr. Ryan Homan is one of the top 50 finalists of the Global Teacher Prize in 2018, Dangal ng Bayan Award, Civil Service Commission in 2017, and Search for Outstanding Volunteers Award in 2016. He is known for his Balsa Basa and Walking for Knowledge, which reaches pupils whose homes are far from the school. Balsa Basa is a floating school where he put up 5,000 pesos of his own money for the Balsa and NGOs donated books and other supplies. Walking for Knowledge prompted the group to walk 1 kilometer to reach their destination wherein they can have a reading and storytelling lesson for kids. Currently, Mr. Homan is the principal one at the Benisitahan Elementary School, Donsol West in Sorsogon. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Ryan Homan. Sir Ryan, please go ahead with your presentation. Sir Ryan, can you hear me? Sir Ryan, hello? I think you're having a problem with your audio, sir. Ah, I think Sir Ryan can hear us now. Sir Ryan? I think Sir Ryan is having some problems with his audio. I think it's best if we can proceed first with the next speaker. Uh, and we will get back to you, Sir Ryan, after Sir Trust.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. For our next speaker, this time we'll be heading to our next destination, to Zimbabwe in Southern Africa. Mr. Trust Mutekwa was born into a large family, the fifth of 12 children, and since he became a teacher, he has managed to inspire his younger siblings to do the same. Now a specialist teacher of children with visual impairment at St. Giles Special School in Harare, Zimbabwe. This is Mr. Mutekwa's 19th year as a teacher and his 11th year working with children who are disabled. So let us all welcome Mr. Trust Mutekwa. Sir Trust? Mr. Trust?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Can you hear us, Mr. Mutekwa?
Yes, I can hear you.
You may proceed now.
Oh, thank you very much. Greetings to you. Start by congratulating you, the Department of Education in Philippines, International Cooperation Office in Philippines. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to share with you an overview of literacy in Zimbabwe, and we work with you to the developments we've had in our education with regards to literacy, and I'm going to share with you the impact of COVID-19 crisis in Zimbabwe and the changes we have had in the pedagogy. We can go ahead, say, Ryan, thank you. So our literacy rate in Zimbabwe, I'm saying it could be about 95% now, because the statistics we have is dated only up to 2014, according to UNESCO Institute of Statistics. We are at about 88.69, but I think now we are towards 95%, because we have been growing since 1980, when we got independence, from 77.79%, and we've been rising over the years to 88.69 in 2014. We can go ahead so that we look at how we got to this point. So this country is 40 years old. We got our independence in 1980, and before independence, we had a liberation struggle, which saw a lot of youngsters going out of school to fight in the bush. And after independence, we had to work towards education for all, and it was also literacy for all, the young and the old coming to school for lessons after the liberation struggle. And as we developed in our education in the 2000s, now we had teacher capacity development in literacy related programs. Like in the ECD, we introduced the early childhood development programs like early reading initiatives with the ECD, which says now the children are going to school from the age of 1, 2. So we have grade 0, which is ECD-A and ECD-B, before we have the traditional grade 1 to grade 7. So reading has been introduced to our children at an early age. And we also, in the juniors, have a remedial program, which is through performance lag address strategies. So this has contributed to the rise in our literacy as a nation. We can go ahead so that we look at now the impact of COVID-19. Our schools closed in March 2020 when we got affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The schools and industries closed. And what does this imply? The families had to move because some of the parents or breadwinners for the children had lost their jobs, and the families moved to rural areas. And the learning patterns and the lifestyles changed. So we look at children in early childhood development, learners in early childhood development being affected there. They've been starting their reading patterns and they were disrupted. And we look at the adolescents no longer going to school, most of them idle, with nothing to do in their communities. The lifestyle changes, and that came with problems. And I'm a specialist teacher in the area of visual impairment. I work with children with disabilities. This constituency was heavily affected. We're going to see how we can move on, Sir Ryan. So this is about the change in lifestyles that has risen. That has seen the rise in teenage pregnancies and early marriages. We've also seen some behavior patterns changing for the worse in our children due to idleness after schools closed. Yes, let's go. Say. Yes. Like I said, my interest is mostly in children within my constituents, children with disabilities. Mostly these students are stationed in special schools, children with disabilities. But when the schools closed, the therapy sessions were disrupted. Students with physical impairments usually attend physiotherapies. Some of them attend speech therapies. Most of them had their therapies disrupted due to school closure. Teachers and learners got out of touch. Our school has about 36 students with visual impairments. But I have less than half of them in touch. Most of them, like I said, they have moved to rural areas where there is poor connectivity or where they cannot afford the connectivity. And learners with visual impairments work with Braille. Learners with hearing impairment work with experts in sign language. But when they go home, some of their family members are not able to work with these techniques. There also was a need to fork out for connectivity, and this came with an extra cost because of working with family members and aides in interpreting like sign language and Braille. I will show you in the next slide. Yes. When we are talking about learners with visual impairments and their need to learn even from home, but there is a challenge like Braille, because Braille is reading and writing where they have to touch what they are reading. And this cannot be delivered to them through online platforms, virtual platforms like we do traditionally. Of course, in some nations, they can do it. They have come up with gadgets that can produce Braille. I've seen some gadgets from Austria and other countries that can produce Braille. But in our context, Braille has to be physically delivered. So we will go on. Yes, let's go on, sir. So we are looking at the changes in pedagogy that took place in our country, that took place with learners in regular school system, and look at how also the changes came within our constituents of learners with disabilities. Learning was taking place via virtual learning platforms, but it only reached out to a few, which says still we have more than 90% of our students not accessing this form of learning because they moved to rural areas where connectivity is a problem. And most of them cannot afford a internet cost. For our learners with the visual impairments or learners with disabilities, most of them would work with their family members via WhatsApp platforms. I myself introduced computer skills for digital literacy with a group of visually impaired students via WhatsApp platforms with their family members, and it was a success. But I'm not happy because I only reached a fraction of the students because most of them are out of reach. And towards June and July, I would work with Braille for some of the students who could not access any learning material on virtual platforms. I would produce Braille at school and take it to collection points in the city. And I would also reach out to some students who are locked down in Harare, students from other schools who are locked down in Harare. So I would take the learning material to collection points in the city center. Then some families engaged private teachers for their children so that they could at least have some lessons, some formal lessons, because it has been difficult also to get in touch with their teachers. I would go even to my rural village sometimes, and I would find there were within the neighbor five household neighboring households. I found 45 students who had moved from cities to the village, and they were out of touch with the learning from their teachers. And in the village, there were a few teachers, and they would conduct open air classes for the students. Some of them were for the benefit of their social and emotional health. We would do art, painting, drawings, and even sporting activities. Now, back to the students with visual impairment. Now we're working on formally producing learning material relevant for learning grade their developmental levels in reading and writing, and we are distributing to where all these students are found around the country. So this is what we are doing with the students with the visual impairment, and also those who are working with learners with hearing impairment are running around to find solutions that they deliver learning material for students with hearing impairment. So I will leave you with this and wait for okay. This is about the open air classes, mostly reaching out to children in the villages to address the social and emotional health issues. With this, teachers, ladies and gentlemen, I will end my presentation here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sir Trust, for sharing with us the overview of the literacy situation in Zimbabwe and the changes in pedagogy in your country. I would like to also congratulate you, sir, for being one of the 2020 Global Teacher Prize finalists. I learned that through your advocacy projects, no amount of disability can hamper learners. Thank you again, Sir Trust. Now we go back to Sir Ryan Homan for him to continue his presentation. Sir Ryan?
Okay, so good morning everyone. Okay na po ba, sir?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, okay. So, all right. So, good morning everyone. I am Ryan Homan from Dunsol, Sorsogon, Philippines. I hope everyone is safe and okay. So, I'm glad to see you all, and of course, I miss you, ICO team and my colleagues from Global Teacher Prize. I'm thankful to ICO because for inviting me to be part of this celebration. Okay, this time we are celebrating the International Literacy Day as proclaimed by the UNESCO that every 8th of September, we need to give more importance to on literacy to at least eradicate ignorance in our community. But how could we continue our advocacy and literacy if there is a COVID-19 pandemic that makes us feel stressed or worried about this crisis? But anyway, let me share to you the background of my hometown, Dunsol. Dunsol, Sorsogon, Philippines is known as the whale shark capital of the world. So next slide, Sir Ryan. So before pandemic happened, a lot of international and local tourists from different places have visited our town just to swim with this big whale shark. And actually, it helps my kababayan then to earn money, to put up some businesses like hotels and restaurant. But because of pandemic this time, people were jobless and some of the businesses were closed. But despite of what's happening right now, I want to share to everyone that there is a community here in Dunsol that makes another story. So let me share to you how I started my literacy projects here in Dunsol. So we all know that Filipinos are resilient. We believe in hope despite the fears and stress brought by this pandemic. I am not afraid to continue my literacy program here in Dunsol. I cannot just close my eyes and sleep without doing something because this is what I have been doing for so many years. I think when I was in high school, I used to be a little teacher to my little kids or to my neighbors, and I just love to share my knowledge to their kids, and until I was given a chance to finish my college through scholarship and pass the licensure examination for teachers in 2008. So we initiated to reopen a community that has no existing school for almost 10 years. Yeah, 10 years po siyang nawala ng ano po ng paaralan because of lack of enrollment, its distance from the community. It was very challenging at first because I was the only teacher that time. I am the janitor. I am the one who take care of my students, and I'm handling multi-grade classes, grades 1, 2, and 3. That time, I have no idea on how to teach multi-grade classes. So I just focus on uh, literacy, numeracy, and other good values for the children. Actually, the community were so thankful and happy because this time they have their own school. So it's not risky for their kids to cross rivers, to climb mountains on the adjacent community. And I served that Old Magisa Elementary School for 5 years, and I was transferred to San Jose, Dunsol, Sorsogon. San Jose is my own community. Okay, so they as you can see on the screen, the pictures of the children, they are my inspiration. This community is my own community. Dito ako nagtapos ng elementary, dito ako lumaki. And when I came there, it is also a multi-grade classes. I vividly remember that I need to wait for almost 2 hours just to reach this community. And when I came there were only 2 classrooms. Lack of facilities, books, and other learning materials. That is why some of the children are actually non-readers and even slow readers. So I handled the grades 5 and 6. And I found out that most of my pupils in grade 6, they cannot even decode the words or comprehend some of the stories I presented to these kids. I did not blame anyone, but I focused on the solutions of the problem. So in fact, it became the source of my inspiration. Since it is my own village, it's time to give back and do something for a change. So I talked to the parents, I presented to them the real situation, and we are very, very lucky that time because we have this organization named Iduko Foundation. They supported our program, our literacy program with books, materials for reading centers, training workshop for teachers, and the children started to develop the love for reading. But still, I noticed some of my pupils did not go to school. There are some high number of dropout. Most of them were absent. So I decided to bring education to the very home of our last mile learners because of the distance kaya minsan absent sila. So those were the challenges. So let me present to you our literacy programs. Balsa Basa. Bakit balsa ang ginamit ko? So as you can see, you need to cross a river just to reach our community. It's a mode of transportation just to go to other side of community. And some of the pupils leave the river bank and they cannot attend classes due to heavy rains, or sometimes they help their parents in farming, or they are the babysitters. So those were the reasons why most of my pupils were absent. So to make up the missed classes of these pupils, every Saturday, Sunday, or even holiday, together with my volunteers, I just I just visit them and just to conduct one-on-one remedial classes or reading activities because I don't want them to be left behind. And at first, parents were resistant. They reluctant. They don't understand yet the concept of our mission. I heard a lot of bad words like nakaka-disturb kami ng kanilang mga anak. Instead, their children will help them in farming, taking care of their siblings. But I did not give up. I just proved to them that I am sincere with this advocacy. So after a few months, they embraced my mission. So I heard testimonies from these parents that because of Balsa-Basa, their children were eager and excited to go back to schools and finish studies. So ganun po yung nangyari sa aming advocacy. Although very challenging at first, but eventually na-embrace naman po ng community. We also hike for an hour just to reach the last mile learners in our community. Every time we passed by children who were working in the farm to help their parents, we just stopped and approached these children to join our session. I asked permission from the parents, and I'm thankful to those parents who support their kids to join us with this advocacy. I continue to encourage parents. I always talk to them to let their kids go back to school because in the school uh, it's very happy and they are well accommodated. I make sure to the parents that I will take care of their kids in the school. Next slide, Sir Ryan, please. Thank you. Okay, Sir Ryan, next slide po. All right, so next po. So that time, so since I encourage a lot of parents, I started to, previous slide po, I started to train parents because I know that they will help us. That time we were only 3 teachers. That's why I started to train the teachers and the parents on how to teach their kids and literacy. I started to present to them the sounds of the letters, the different reading strategies like Fuller techniques, Marunko, Claverias techniques, and they were very, very happy that even though they were not able to finish a high school or even college, they became teachers to their own kids. So yun po, naging ano po sila, naging successful po yung kanilang training workshop at natuwa po sila dahil this time they are equipped, they are knowledgeable about, they are confident enough to teach their own kids. So next slide po. So as you can see on the board, on the screen, so those parents were very happy and thankful to us because they learn a lot. They learn a lot from this training workshop. We believe that education begins at home. So we as the parent, we were the first teacher of our children. So this time, the parents were empowered. They are now confident to teach their own kids because they know how to teach their kids on literacy, on how to decode words, and teach them how to conduct a storytelling workshop. And I was very happy because all the outputs of the parents, they decided to put up their home-based learning centers at home. So home-based learning centers at home, they just provide uh, corners at home that with table and chairs. The school provides materials for them so that they continue to study even at home. And the government has noticed our initiative. So they have constructed hanging bridge this time. So and of course the farm to market road. So it would be easy for us to reach the other kids in other community. So that way we use balsa just to cross the rivers, but now we have this hanging bridge. So thank you. I am thankful to the government for this projects. And a lot of people also have noticed our initiatives, even from abroad. They support and they share their blessings. Like Kuya Mark Reed, colleagues from Global Teacher Prize. And after that, in 2019, I was transferred to new community in Magaan Elementary School. So along the coastal area. So I have to continue. I have to continue what I have started in my previous school. So I immediately introduced my programs. So yan po. So since along the coastal area, pinangalanan ko siya ng Coastal Basa Philippines. So Ryan, next slide po. Coastal Basa is same with Balsa Basa. So I try to reach out the community, the whole community. We every Saturday and Sunday, I always visit my students, especially those who are struggling readers. The parents, they also embrace the programs. They also render their services as volunteer teachers. And I am happy that we encourage more volunteers to join our advocacy. And just this last June, I was again transferred to Vinisitahan Elementary School. It is adjacent community of Imagaan. So of course, I have to continue what I have started in San Jose and Imagaan community. At this time, I'm very lucky because most of the people there are very positive to embrace these programs, especially the teachers, PTA, and barangay officials. As of now, I don't have any experience of resistance in this community compared to my previous school. So I decided to implement and continue the home-based learning programs because it is to, uh, suitable at this time of pandemic. Since there is no face-to-face, the kids will just stay at home and study together with their parents. Uh, my program entitled Viniskuelan sa Balay, from the word Vinisitahan, my school, and the word Eskuelan sa Balay or home-based learning program. The parents occupy space or corner at home. So as I said earlier, the parents provide materials like table and chairs, cabinets for their kids. And then the school provides the learning materials, supplies, and other modules. So we all know that education begins at home. Sinabi ko po yun kanina. So this time, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, since we have these modules, we are busy preparing for more modules. It will develop the love for reading because whether or like it or not, they will read the modules and they keep on browse the modules together with their parents. So, yeah, so even pandemic, I continue to visit my learners, my community, because I want to inform them that education must continue despite the pandemic. That's why we have this home-based learning program. We set up home at home together with the help of the parents. We continue to monitor and provide materials to the parents like Marongko booklets, Fuller booklets, and other learning materials. Though it's still vacation, but they continue and they started to read and study at home. Yeah, provision of learning materials for children. I have a friend from Manila. She provided us with these booklets, and we printed more modules for them, and I distributed to the parents for their kids. Next slide, Sir Ryan. So as you can see on the screen, we have this learning materials. The parents will get the learning materials in our kindness station. So we have this kindness station, all the donations from stakeholders like rice, sugars, and other foods. We just stack it on a corner, and then those people in the community who are needy, they just visit us and ask for support. Like if they don't have rice, then we provide rice for them. So we continue to support the parents, the community amidst pandemic because a lot of people are still supporting our advocacy and literacy. So I cannot do it alone because I continue the fire of passion despite the pain and sacrifices. We could still do our purpose, which is to change the world one at a time. Sir, next slide, please. So according to Mark Zuckerberg, the biggest risk is not taking a risk. So importante talaga na we need to take a risk. And according naman kay Wayne Gretzky, you will miss 100% of the shots if you don't take a risk. So it is important that we have to follow our heart. I asked myself, what if I did not take a risk of balsa-basa or innovate something to help my community, and I just focus only in the four walls of my classroom? I think I might not change the mindset of the people toward education. I would not meet you all. By taking a risk, we could generate new possibilities and more opportunities to sustain our projects. And with that, I would like to end my session with this very good thought. It takes a village to educate, and of course, this time, and technology to educate a child. So it was shared to me by Ma'am March last time. Nowadays, we need everyone in our community to educate our children, just like a broomstick. If there is only one broomstick, we cannot clean the mess at once. But if we work together, it would be easy for us to do our work and mission. Since there is no face-to-face because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we need the 100% support of our parents, community, NGOs, LGUs, just to make sure the learnings of the children continue. It is actually now a shared responsibility of the teachers, parents, and the whole stakeholders. As an educator and a school head, we need to empower more parents and make them feel confident about the new normal because the world has changed due to COVID-19 pandemic. But I hope your passion will remain. So thank you so much and God bless.
Thank you very much, Sir Ryan.
Okay, thank you po.
Sorry about that. And thank you for sharing with us the impacts of COVID-19 to you as an educator, and also the changes in the pedagogies in your school. And indeed, your literacy projects has helped a lot of kids to enjoy reading, and everyone will also agree that education begins at home. Okay, for our
Okay,
next
thank you.
speaker, um, Ryan, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Jamie. Now, after Sir Trust from Zimbabwe and Sir Ryan Homan from the Philippines, we now bring you to Belgium and Western Europe. Now, unfortunately, due to time gap between Philippines and Belgium, Mr. Koen Tiemers could not make it, but we are still fortunate that he forwarded a video presentation for us. Mr. Koen Tiemers is an educator, author, and speaker. He is a Global Teacher Prize 2018 Top 10 finalist who launched several global educational projects like humandifferences.com, climateaction.info, and projectkakuma.com. Currently, he is the executive director of Take Action Global. Now let's watch his video.
Good morning. My name is Koen Timmers. I'm based in Belgium, and I've been teaching for 20 years in 2 different schools. In one school, we've been shifting to remote learning for 10 years already, and I teach IT in that school. And in another school, I teach future teachers in the teacher training department how to use technology in their classroom. And today, I'd like to focus on 2 different areas. First of all, I'd like to focus on remote learning with or without technology. And I also want to showcase a global educational project and what people can do and teachers can do to connect students globally with technology. So I'm based in Belgium, and we had the first wave of Corona from mid-March to mid-June. All of a sudden, all the teachers and all the students were at home. And by government, we were not allowed to offer new materials and new curriculum to the students. We had to rehearse, and that was called pre-teaching. And right now, we are in code yellow. Students are allowed to go back to school. We work with bubbles. We are only allowed to see 5 people a week, except for the young students who are less than 12 years old. So right now, fingers crossed, we are in a good position. But once we go to code red, students will be back home, and teachers as well. Once a teacher is a little bit ill, they have to remain in quarantine at home for 2 weeks. So during the first wave, a few months ago, not all of the students and teachers had internet connection. And we were really lucky in our country, which is a very small country with only like 11 million people. Our main internet provider has been providing internet connection during those months for free. And we have a non-profit called Close the Gap who worked with the government to collect laptops, used laptops, and give those refurbished laptops to those who needed new devices, basically. But we can say that not all of our students had laptops and internet connection during those months, which was an issue. And I'm pretty sure that's the same for nearly every country. So I've been teaching about, I've been presenting about distance learning for many years. And it used to be with a very fancy presentation to express and showcase basically what one can do with technology. But I think something really important happened during Corona. People changed their mind shift, and all of a sudden teachers were teaching online. And I was really impressed by the fact how they were able to do that with a lot of training basically, because being trained is really key. And distance learning is not that buzzword anymore, and technology got a huge upgrade, which doesn't mean that it is available for everyone, but it may be an alternative for a classroom, but it will never replace a teacher, which is really important to understand, because I don't think that AI and artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtual reality, none of those technologies will ever replace a teacher. And here is why. What happened during the past months is that all of a sudden teachers were using Zoom, Google Hangouts, maybe WebEx, Teams, Skype for being able to deliver content and knowledge to their students at home. And what they did is directly connect technology to the certain content, to their curriculum, which was really cool. It was really good to see, but that's not the best way to do that. And what is really important to know that there's been a lot of research about what is the best way to teach. And one way is by instructing our students and giving them knowledge. And another way is by shifting to other learning systems like problem-based learning, collaborative learning, playful learning, project-based learning, etc., etc. And both ways to teach our students have the same amount of research and the same amount of people who claim that this is the best way and the only way to teach. But I think it's important to know that pedagogy is really key, and that there's no holy grail. Every subject, every age of the student, even school financial resources and even culture require a different approach. So for you, it may be necessary to teach by instructing your students, but for me, with my subject and my age of students, it may make more sense to shift to another learning approach. Knowing that, pedagogy is really key, it's really important. What you should do as a teacher, and this is what teachers have been doing for ages, is that they have to decide what kind of pedagogy makes the best sense for that content, and then they have to connect and match the perfect technology and tool which is available at that time. Because a teacher is a pedagogical engineer, a teacher has to judge like this topic I will teach by instructing, and this topic I will ask my students to discuss and brainstorm and to exchange and to present, in essence. And it's really important to know that teaching is neither necessary nor sufficient to produce learning, and Jean Leif wants to state two different things which are really important. Students are able to learn without teachers, and it's always about the student and about teaching, and not about the students and learning, and not about teaching, the process of teaching. There's no holy grail. And this is a really important framework I wanted to share with you. There are three important axes in blended learning, and I grade out face-to-face because when you are in a lockdown, that is not an option. The alternative is the other side of the axe, that is online learning. Students can learn individual or in a group, and synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous means that they are able to learn live at this very moment as you are watching this webinar right now. Asynchronous means that you're learning on demand, anywhere, at any time. And the interesting part of those axes is that you can make all kinds of connections, and you can match synchronous to group and online, or individual to online and asynchronous. These are all different cases which require different technologies, and that is really important to realize. So first of all, as a teacher, you have to judge what is the best way to teach this certain topic, and then you have to find the technology which is available to do that, because students are able to learn from each other on a distance online as well. There are certain technologies and ways to do that. What we noticed is that many teachers shifted to synchronous learning. They used Zoom, Teams, and other video conferencing tools. And this is great to have an interaction with your students. You can record your sessions so they're able to catch up, which is necessary when one family just has one device, one laptop, and 3 children. At that time, they have to record sessions. But we also know that there is another really valuable approach, which is creating small videos which you send to your students so they can learn at all time at their own pace. And that is really interesting to know, because students, some of them want to gain the maximum amount of knowledge. They want to go really fast, and others, they want to learn by rehearsing. They need to catch up and want to study the basics, basically. But this doesn't allow interaction. And so I think in the first stage, teachers have been instructing live and they shifted to video conferencing tools. But in the next stage, we will have to be creative by making really clever combinations of those different approaches. And the conditions at home, the culture, the age, the subject, all of those really matter and will influence the learning process. And I noticed this tweet in which a teacher claimed that no student has to sit through a Zoom lecture. This is really interesting. It's provocative. I do agree that being instructed for 99% of the time is not the best way, but at some time you have to be instructed. You have to have some context and background before you're able to work in a group. And I think that the next scenario will be that we have to shift to hybrid learning. A teacher may be online in quarantine for 2 weeks, but the students can come to school, to the classroom, and they will be instructed on a distance by technology. Or a few students are at home because they're ill in quarantine, and the rest of the students are in the classroom. And I already am teaching like this at this very moment, in which some of my students are at home and I am with my students in the classroom, and we are all learning at the same time. But also another scenario is that as teachers records a few small video lessons, sends those lessons to the students, and those students who really need to know more, have questions, they will come to an online space where the teacher is available to answer questions. These are all hybrid learning scenarios. And I'm sure that there are others which I didn't mention yet. At the end of the session, you have to evaluate as a teacher, as a school, as an institute, how well you did, how was it going by shifting to technology. And some schools are using tablets to replace textbooks, and that is the S of substitution. They are just enhancing learning. Some of the by shifting to technology, you may have like a search function, you may have like a spelling corrector. Those are augmenting learning. But what we really want is going to the M or the R, in which you transform the learning of your students, in which you transform your classroom by using technology. And the R, the redefinition, means that you are doing new things, new kind of tasks, which are not which you can't do without using that particular tool. And I'd like to show you what you can do by using technology to redefine your students' learning process. Because I launched the Climate Action Project 4 years ago, and the first year we had 500 schools across 90 different countries. And what we wanted is to focus during 1 month, October, on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we wanted to go to the direction of student-centered learning, in which the students had to do the work. They had to explore, brainstorm, discuss, create, have fun, connect, present, and share their findings at our website online. And the students had to create a weekly video just with their findings, their solutions. And this way, students from New Zealand, Canada, South Africa were able to learn from students in the Philippines. And we had students of all ages, all subjects, everybody was able to join. We had students going on an excursion, but also parents at home. So we were able to bring change at home, bottom up, but also showing the students, and the students were able to share with the teachers and the parents what they did in the classroom, which is really valuable. And some students didn't have the technology at all. They had to use pen and paper, but still they were able to work together and share their findings. We had students in Sierra Leone, and they had mud flows because of climate change. We had students from other continents listening to those videos and learning in an asynchronous way from their peers globally, which is really authentic. But we also shifted to virtual interactions, to synchronous learning on the distance. And we even had experts during webinars sharing their wisdom as well. We used technology in a very meaningful way. The students learned from each other how to use PowerPoint, how to edit videos, and we even got track of new technologies. I didn't know about those VR glasses, but they are only priced like $2, and you can use them with your smartphone, and with Google Expedition, you will be able to travel to every corner of the world. We had students creating their own video games, but also teachers who discovered that their students believe everything they read on the internet, and they had to tackle fake news, and they dedicated this project to critical thinking. Students came to school during school holidays just to be able to join this project, and even created echo bricks in Indonesia to make learning more authentic. But we also had students who wanted to solve the problem. We want to do more than students offering them definitions about climate change. We want them also to solve the problems. And we had students in Canada, the 3D printed coral reefs, but also in Nigeria, who created their own biomass plant, their own solar-driven cart, and their own bioplastics, even editable water bubbles. But we also shifted to taking action, not just going on a strike and making a lot of noise, but going to the Prime Minister, asking for substantial change, recycling. The students in Ireland made the Green Dot movement and brought national change. They received a letter of their president. And we even had a tree planting of 60 million trees in Malawi. This was all because of one small project, the Climate Action Project. And there's good news for you, because you can join the project this year in October as well, because we will be having 10 million participants this year. And this is supported by a lot of governments globally, by 15 different ministries of education and environment. It's supported by WWF International, and we will be spreading and giving you a free curriculum. The whole project is free to join, which has lesson plans, which has activities, and even thanks to NASA, you will be able to send a message to Mars, your students' drawings, their solutions, their messages, but also yourself. And we know that due to Corona, you may be at home during a lockdown. We will be providing very easy activities to be taken by students at home, and you are the one to decide how much time you want and can spend on this project. Even half an hour brings you on board, and being part of the project also means that you will be personally guided by our facilitators, and that you will be able to connect with other teachers on our website, because the website allows to connect with teachers from 120 different countries, all for free. In case you're interested, you can go to our website, which is climate-action.info. You can join us, just signing up, and you will be sent guidelines via email. There will be webinars with experts from the UN, from WWF, from NASA, and all kinds of experts, but also students. You can read more about the project. You can also reach out to me in case there's questions. And I'd like to thank you and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Koen, for sharing the changes in pedagogies in Belgium. And at this time of pandemic, technology plays really a big part in our kids' learning. But of course, I believe that teachers can't be replaced. Now for our next speaker, Mr. Francis Jim Toscano is an internationally recognized teacher, speaker, and trainer whose projects and innovations focus on empowering learners to drive their own learnings and become agents of change. As an education technology coach and consultant, Sir Jim is passionate about guiding educators and school leaders and communities in designing transformative learning experiences and technology innovation programs. Recently included in the 30 under 30 global list of literacy leaders and change makers of the International Literacy Association, Sir Jim and his passion project Kids Can Innovation Camp were recognized by hundreds organizations in Finland as one of the 10 most innovative education projects in the world that highlight sustainability education. And in 2017, he was a top 50 finalist in the Global Teacher Prize. He is also an Apple Professional Learning Specialist and Apple Distinguished Educator. He also continues to share his ideas via Empowered Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Mr. Francis Jim Toscano. Good morning, Sir Jim.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Toscano, and it's nice to be invited. Thank you so much thank you so much the Department of Education International Cooperation Office for this invitation. I'm just gonna prepare my screen. All right. So I hope my screen's working well. Um, this is just a very short sharing of my experience as an educator at this time of the pandemic. It's aptly titled "The Impact of COVID-19 Pandemic on Educators and Pedagogies for Online Distance Learning." So just to introduce myself, thank you, Jamie, for that wonderful introduction. Deep in my heart, I'm an educator. Despite being an administrator right now in my school. So I handle the EdTech program of my school in the grade school unit and the department chair. I am also the department chairperson for the Religious and Values Education department in the grade school unit of Xavier School San Juan. My expertise is really on education technology and how this could be applied in education, whether it's face-to-face and right now through distance education. I am a trained Apple Professional Learning Specialist and Apple Distinguished Educator. And I have worked and I continue to work with other organizations, edtech companies in the Philippines as a digital learning specialist and consultant. I also maintain an Empower Ed platform. It's an education advocacy. And I hope that you could take note of this. We are on YouTube, on Facebook, and we have a podcast that have been very, very much helpful at this time of the pandemic to reach out educators and school leaders. So I hope that you get to visit our different digital platform for Empower Ed advocacy. Okay. So one of the things that I would like to start with is about the report, an independent report that I have co-authored or co-written with other educators around the world. Koen Timers is a friend of mine. The one that you've seen a while ago is one of the co-authors, one of my co-authors for this report. In the Thinking About Pedagogy in an Unfolding Pandemic report that we have written for UNESCO and Education International. There are a lot of things that we have discovered here. This was basically written about on how educators could move forward and understand um, the unfolding pandemic. This was written in March 2020 as we braced ourselves for the first wave of school closures. We are now in September, and a lot of things are still true right now. And one of the things that I would like to share is that, you know, when we talk about impact on educators, I for one would like to speak from my experience. I've been doing work from home ever since March. There was a school break, the quote and unquote summer break in the Philippines, summer school break. But I've never gone out. Maybe less than 5 times I've gone out of my home because I'm so scared of what's happening outside. Um, when we speak about impact on educators, I myself would like to speak with my own personal experience, which resonates with everyone. The idea of fear and anxiety. You know, fear and anxiety is very, very real right now. A lot of us have been looking for different ways to cope with the fear and anxiety that we have. A lot of us has become plantitos or plantitas. We've been taking care of plants. We've been doing a lot of exercises at home just to maintain our own sanity right now. But when we talk to the different teachers, as educators, it's very important that we become hopeful and we look forward. Uh, We are looking for solutions right now. And, you know, we are doing this for the first time. We are in this for the first time. And, you know, I understand the difficulty. I understand the challenges that we are facing right now. But it also challenges teachers they also challenge teachers to find solutions to become problem solvers at this time of the pandemic. One of the biggest challenge right now is, you know, transitioning from face to face to distance learning. What the pandemic has done for us is to accelerate a lot of things that we would like to happen. For example, in terms of technology in the classroom, I myself have been using technology in the classroom for a lot of years right now. And we've been doing that in my school, in my school. But if you look outside, the before the pandemic, there was a very slow adoption of technology in the classroom. A lot of us would say, you know, technology is not important. We can still teach our students face to face. But when the pandemic came in, and this is not just in the K to 12 sector, but even in the higher education institution, when the pandemic came in, everyone had to rapidly transition. Everyone has to do a rapid transition to online distance learning. And you know, there were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of issues because teachers themselves were not ready for it. Students were not ready also. So if you have the capacity to do online distance learning, then you will have to meet a lot of challenges. It's because we are doing this for the first time. We've never really done it. So for my sharing today, when I speak about pedagogy, I want to speak about my own experience with online distance learning, because right now that has been also the way that we have been doing our education continuity program in my school. We are now 1 month into our school year. So the DepEd moved the new school year in October 5. But since I teach in a private school, we have already started our school year last July. And we've been doing online distance learning ever since. So my work as an EdTech coordinator, even before I became an administrator and EdTech coordinator, my experience really is embedded or anchored in on how I use technology in the classroom. A while ago, Kuhn wonderfully presented how technology is being used in the classroom. In my school, in my classroom, my students do not only use technology to type Word file, to search for whatever. We have taught our students in my school to create artifacts of learning, that would demonstrate their mastery of knowledge and skill. So ever since then, my work has to help my school prepare for online distance learning. I'm gonna show you some pictures on how we started preparing. Just an inside sharing, inside information. We have prepared for online distance learning ever since the March lockdown. So I've been in in constant conversation and discussion with my principal, with the other administrators in my school, and we were preparing already for the worst that would come, that would happen for the new school year. So I would safely say that our online distance learning right now that is happening have been, have been in plan since March. That's how rapidly our how rapid we address the issue that we want that we were facing. So since March, so we had a few week break in April, and then we resumed work in May. So a lot of the preparations happened in May. So we had teacher training, we have parent and student orientation. We oriented our parents. We did technology training for our parents and of our students, especially for our young learners, because our young learners will need help because we know that they don't have the technology skills to use for online distance learning. We did some workshops, and of course, I also did some administrative job preparing the teachers on our level. So from one-to-one iPad learning in the classroom, my school, Xavier School, where I teach, has been using technology for more than 10 years now. We have pioneered in the Philippines the adoption of one-to-one iPad learning. What does it mean? Our students from kinder until grade 12 get to experience learning with integration with the use of the iPad. So that started 10 years ago. Last year, we celebrated our 10-year of doing one-to-one iPad learning, and we sort of created a lot of innovations around it. Since 2016, we have been recognized as an Apple Distinguished School. So Apple Education, through Apple, the Apple company, has recognized my school as one of the Apple Distinguished Schools. There are only 3 Apple Distinguished Schools in the Philippines, and we have been the first. We have been one of the first to be recognized globally because of our innovation in our school. However, because of the face-to-face, because of the school closure, we had to transition, and it's very, very. I think it's a blessing for our school community that we have introduced the iPad early on, because when we transitioned to our online distance learning program, which we aptly entitled Excel or Xavier School e-learning program, our students were ready with technology skills. We had to prepare them in terms of mindset, in terms of learning environment, of learning from home. But especially for our older students, we were able to prepare them in terms of technology skills. There were only a few things that we needed to teach them because they have been using the iPad or they've been using technology in the classroom for learning for the longest time. So one of the things that I would want to focus on when we prepared for this is called teacher collaboration and technology. Teacher collaboration and technology played a very, very important role. In our Excel program, we highlighted the importance of literacy. We highlighted the importance of numeracy. We highlighted the importance of other subjects that will have to be put into play when we resume classes or when we resumed classes. And we see technology as a vehicle, as an opportunity or as an avenue for us to deliver learning for our students. So how do I connect this with literacy? Well, without our online distance learning program, then our literacy program, our literacy classes will not be able to be delivered. So this Excel or Xavier School e-learning is our education continuity program. And this is just one of the things that I've started in my school is we created the Excel team, the EdTech Excel team. The EdTech team, I have already a team of EdTech teachers whom I coach, whom I train to become coaches, EdTech coaches to their different departments or grade levels. So what I did was to empower them, continuously empower them for this school year so that they become the EdTech champions of their school, or of their grade levels or subject. So I'm just gonna show you some of the things that we have done to prepare for online distance learning. So we have different workshops. So last May, we did a lot of workshops for our students, for our teachers, and we talk about the different programs. We did not have a lot of apps to be used. We did not have a lot of apps. We chose the most basic apps so that our teachers and our students can learn them better. This is the usual scenario that you will see right now in our teachers' home. So they teach from the comfort of their home. We're doing work from home, but at the same time, it took a lot of preparation for us. It took a lot of training. It took a lot of encouragement so that our teachers would be able to teach in online distance learning program. And this is very interesting because each teacher had to create their own teaching nook or teaching corner, and we just needed to adapt with our students. Just because we're doing online distance learning doesn't mean that our students were always looking into the camera or into the video camera of their devices. We also allow our students to stand up. We also allow our students to stretch. We allow them to talk to each other, to communicate to each other like in the classroom. We also allow them to share about the things that they like. We also allow them to share about what's happening at home. So it's not just pure academic study, study, study. We also emphasize the importance of non-academic learning. Non-academic character formation are the things that we also push right now, especially that we are in the time of the pandemic. So therefore, one of the things that I have done or that I have designed and created for my school, and I also partnered with another publishing company in the Philippines so that they will be able to share it to a lot of teachers in the country. I did some reflection about learning in online distance learning or online education. And one of the things that I discovered is one of the things that I've done is the design principles in designing for blended or online learning. So when I did some research, when I talked to teachers, when I look into my experience, because number one, my master's is in UP Open University, University of the Philippines Open University, and I focus on distance education. So the way I learn is through online distance learning. The way I am being trained is through online distance learning. And at the same time, I also taught through online distance learning in one of a school, in one of the senior high school in Abra before the pandemic. I have already done blended distance learning. So when I look into my own experience, when I look into the experience of other teachers, I was able to come up with the design principles in designing for blended or online learning. This is the resource that I have written. You can download this. You can search for it, Embracing Online Distance Learning. It's a free resource. It's a primer. It's a primer that I have written to guide school leaders, to guide educators on what it means to do online distance learning. So you can just look for this and download it for free online. So let's talk about the big ideas. So when I was talking to teachers, one of the things that I reminded to them is that when we were creating our online modules, so in distance education, it's always good to do modules, whether it's printed, whether it's online, or whatever form it is. Distance education works well with modules. We did some modular, so our approach right now is modular learning. I know in DepEd, modular learning also means printed, but in our school, we're doing online distance learning in a modular way. So when we look into the different modules, I reminded my teachers that when you design your modules, there are 6 things that you need to consider. Number one, very important and first thing that you want to do, you have to design for relationship. You don't dive immediately into the lesson. Instead, ask them how they are. Connect with your students because you are now, you're teaching from a distance. Your students are very far away from you. So the first thing that you need to do is to build relationship with them. So aside from building relationship, you have to build learner agency. You need to teach them how to become independent learner. And then afterwards, I told them that in your module, in your instruction, 3 things you need to consider. Number one, design for interaction, design for feedback, design for authenticity. And then of course, since you are using technology tools, you design with appropriate tools and resources. So let's just try to go in each of these things that I've been talking about. Number one, first, relationship and learner agency. These are non-academic aspect of online distance learning, but seldom do people talk about this. Right now, if you look into the workshops that we have, it's always about how to use this, in whatever. It's all about tools. None talk about, no one talks about how do we build relationship in distance education. How do we train our students to become independent learner? Those are the challenges that we have right now. And you know, when we wrote our independent report to UNESCO, one of the battle cry that we have been talking about is Maslow before Bloom. When you are doing your distance education now, it's not just Maslow before Bloom. It's Maslow and Bloom. What does that mean? Maslow before Bloom means that when you are beginning your program, you need to ensure that your students are safe, they feel secure, and they are ready. That's Maslow. Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's hard for students to practice your Bloom skills or do what you are requiring if if they don't feel safe and if they don't feel secured right now. So Maslow before Bloom. But once you are already in your distance education program, you need to ensure that both Maslow and Bloom are properly followed up. They are sustained together. So you need to sustain making sure that your students are safe and secured, but at the same time, you need to make sure and encourage your students to continue learning. That's where Bloom comes in. So the job of the educator right now becomes more challenging because you need to maintain or sustain both of these two dimensions. In the big idea of education in the pandemic right now, Maslow and Bloom are just two sides of one single coin, and you cannot separate them from each other. In terms of designing for appropriate tools and resources, um, this this simply means that we need to design, or we need to ask our students to learn to use appropriate tools. Very interesting. For the younger students, for example, will you ask the younger learners to use complicated apps and tools? You know, right now, this is very interesting. A lot of people are coming out as edtech experts. You know, they know how to use this, they know how to use that, they know how to manipulate this, they know how to manipulate that. But you know, one thing that they have been missing in the workshops or webinars that they have been giving or that they have been attending is to remind the teachers that, you know, it's not about technology. It's about the pedagogy that you have. It's about understanding the context of your students. I have seen some teachers from the younger grade levels use apps. In some other school, they use apps that are complicated for younger learners. It doesn't follow, okay? It's not about the app that you use. It's about how prepared the students are in terms of using the apps for online distance learning. Because if the apps that you use are too complicated, the worst thing that could happen is you waste your time in using that app because students do not understand how to use it, or you focus too much on the tool itself that you forget your learning outcomes, your learning competencies, you forget about your interaction, you forget about giving feedback. So a very, very important reminder in my design principle, design with appropriate tool. It's not about you as the teacher being an edtech expert. It's about how the students will be able to cope with you through the technology that you have. All right, so that's designing for appropriate tools and resources. The next one is interaction. And you know, it's very interesting because I love how Kuhn explained this a while ago. So I will just be going through it quickly. In distance education, there are three main types of interactions that we look into. Okay, there is a student to teacher interaction. That means the student and teacher are talking to each other. That could be in the form of video conferences or video calls or whatever. You also have student to student interaction. So you want the student to interact with their students through different platforms. Number one, if you're using like Zoom, Zoom that we're using right now has breakout rooms. So in our school, we assign the students into groups so that they can discuss as a group. Okay, that's how we facilitate collaboration. Or without the need for video conferences, you can also use different platforms like Google Suite or online or cloud-based collaboration. You can ask them to do or to collaborate on a single document. Those are ways of collaborating. But one important thing that you need to discover in terms of distance education is you allow the students to study independently. You give them flexibility. You allow them to exercise independent learning, flexibility so that they can study on their own. Of course, if you've noticed, DepEd has recommended the online, the number of hours students should be facing their devices. It's the screen time. That is what we call a screen time in EdTech. And you know, one way so that you will avoid too much screen time is to allow the students to study asynchronously. When we say asynchronous study, it's allowing the student to study at their own time. Synchronous learning is going online together, like what we're doing right now. This is a synchronous activity. It's a webinar. But allowing the student to interact with the content independently, individually, that is asynchronous discussion or asynchronous learning activity. And in distance education, that is very, very important because you cannot have your student facing their screen for the longest time. It will not make sense and it will not be very, very healthy. So right now in distance education, when we design our modules in class, we ask the teachers to also design asynchronous activity and not to be online all the time. Okay? So the very, very important idea, balance synchronous and asynchronous learning activities. The last two principles that I have is what we call as designing for feedback and designing for authenticity. What do you mean by designing for feedback? Designing for feedback reminds teachers that in distance education, you know, in literature, in a lot of studies about distance education, there is a high mortality rate. What does that mean? A lot of students will fail in distance education or will not become successful. Why? It's because their teachers do not give them feedback or their teachers do not give them high quality or timely feedback. So right now, whether you're doing online or you're doing printed distance education, print-based, ask yourself, how is the teacher going to give feedback? The module cannot give feedback on its own. It's very important that the teacher will have to use other ways to deliver feedback to the students. Your formative assessments, students will have to understand them with the help of the teacher. So in online distance learning, we ask our teachers to use different platforms so that they can deliver high quality feedback to the student learning. And then the last one is designing for authenticity, which means that the best assessments right now are the ones that will show authentic learning. And you know, I don't Kuhn mentioned this a while ago, the use of project-based learning, challenge-based learning, problem-based learning. Those are authentic ways to integrate real-world scenario in distance education. Project-based learning, you allow the students to create a project that will demonstrate their learning or mastery of knowledge and skills. And that's very, very important. I hope that we get into those kinds of things. Right now, we're very much stuck in a paper and pen kind of assessment. We always assess our students through paper and pen. But even before the pandemic, we have been advocating for 21st century authentic assessment. Let the student create, because in real life, when they apply to their new career or they apply to their work, they don't just answer tests. Their future employee will ask them of what they can do, what they create in their career. So let us remember that education is about preparing them for the real life. And in real life, it's not just paper and pen tests. It's about them being asked to create something. Okay? So a few, just to put things together, these are my favorite reminders to my teachers. When we're creating content and learning materials for distance education, whether it's online or not, I have 5 reminders. Number 1, keep it bite-sized. segmenting, chunking. Make it digestible. Make it, make it palatable. Make it enticing for students. You don't want to overload the students with a lot of ideas. Keep your learning materials or your content bite-sized. Kun mentioned a while ago, short video clips. You can do that for your students. Make it clear also when you're creating your online videos, make sure that it's not just about the animation or whatever. You need to make sure that you highlight the big ideas. Give examples. You need to make clear your content. Go for audio and visual, showing for understanding. That means that you can ask the students to speak about what they've learned. They can create something. Or when you're creating your content, always make sure that your multimedia content has audio and visual components. Remember, in psychology, we get to put information in our long-term memory if they catch our audio and visual sensory organs and we embed them, we try to put them in our long-term memory. And my favorite, mommy principle. Mommy principle, what does that mean? Minimal activity, maximum impact. A lot of teachers want to do a lot of things. At this time of the pandemic and even before the pandemic, we have been taught the simplest things are the best things in life. So what does it mean? In education, keep things simple. Mommy, minimal activities, few activities, but those activities should have maximum impact to your students. Okay? And lastly, very, very important, communication. I hope that that all teachers will be able to promote communication with parents. Parents are stakeholders, as we love to say it. They are our partners in education. So I hope at this time of the pandemic, we don't just talk about pedagogy. We don't just talk about learning. We should also talk about our partnership, homeschool partnership, because at this time, we need the help of the parents. We need to recognize them. And recognizing that means that we need to provide communication opportunities so that we can help them or support them at home. In the end, number one, very important to remind ourselves, context before content. We need to understand the context of our students. We need to understand how they are. We need to understand their needs. We need to understand their challenges because in the end, kahit sobrang ganda yung module mo, even if your module is so well designed, if your students are not ready to learn it, if your students are not in the proper context or situation to learn, then they will not have a very, very good effect on them. So therefore, what's the big challenge right now? What's the biggest impact right now of the COVID-19 pandemic for the teachers or educators and even school leaders? Now is the time to practice more empathy. We need to understand our learners. We need to understand their families, the parents, so that we can better deliver learning to them. Empathy is one of the most basic skills that we hope to practice right now. And then just to close, here are some resources that I would like to share to you. Things that I have worked on during this quarantine at the time of the pandemic. So there's this report that I've co-written, which I mentioned a while ago. There is this Embracing Online Distance Learning primer that I have also written and worked with another publishing company in the Philippines. And of course, if you have Spotify or Apple Podcasts, there is an online radio show that I have. And there's a special series entitled Empowered Podcast Online Distance Learning, where I talk about the different aspects of online distance learning. So I hope you could take some opportunity to get these resources that I have done for educators and school leaders right now. And with that, I end my part. Thank you so much.
Um, thank you, Sir Jim. Thank you, Sir Jim, for sharing with us the innovations or the continuity program done by the Saver School, especially in this time of pandemic. Truly, as what quoted by the Secretary, education must continue even in times of crisis, whether it may be a calamity, a disaster, an emergency, quarantine, or even war. Now, thank you very much again, Sir Jim. Now we proceed with the next presenter. So Mr. Wendell Alvarez was inspired to pursue education in part due to his father's painful experience of dropping out of high school. Realizing that education was a necessary first step to escape poverty, Wendell decided to support himself through his studies, earning a degree in education and passing the licensure examination for teachers in 2005. Wendell now works as a mobile teacher for the Alternative Learning System, or ALS. This is parallel learning system in the Philippines that provides a practical alternative to school instruction, teaching subjects and skills through both formal and informal means, with an emphasis on teaching out-of-school children as well as adults who may have had little education. ALS takes learning to underprivileged and marginalized areas of the country. Now let's all welcome Sir Wendell Alvarez. Sir Wendell, please proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, Sir Ryan. Thank you for the kind introduction. Good morning to our fellow literacy warriors in the Philippines. I am certainly blessed to be invited in the 2020 International Literacy Day. This event also coincides with the kick-off celebration of World Teachers Month. So Karamuan, it is a peninsula town, is a group of islands and islets scattered in the Pacific Ocean, endowed with nature's beauty and preserved by its seclusion, made famous by the hit global reality show franchise Survivor, and became internationally acclaimed tourist destination. But on the onset of the COVID-19 virus, did not seclude the town, its spread or outbreak. Even communities from far-flung barangays fear for the health and its effect for their daily living. So when the threats of the impact of the pandemic reach the Philippines, the Department of Education must continue, even the country declared a national health emergency. What is the impact of COVID-19 as an educator and changes in pedagogies brought by COVID-19 pandemic? So may I present to you the data on enrollment of Karamuan North District, the current status on literacy in the area I serve from 2019 or from 2017 to 2019. Our district enrollment ranges from 900 to 100 through the help of our barangay literacy workers. Part of the impact of COVID-19 is the decline in enrollment, which can be attributed to the fear of potential learners to be infected by the virus. However, enrollment in ALS is, as it happened, continuous year-round. In this picture, this is a Sichulipata, my adopted community, one of the remotest island communities in Karamoan. The seclusion of the place reflects a real picture of intense poverty. Their only means of livelihood is fishing, while most of the mothers are taking care of the home and children. The basic education learning continuity plan was crafted by the curriculum and instruction division of the Department of Education to address the changes in the current system. Since the face-to-face delivery of learning is not applicable, other modalities were explored for implementation. The learning continuity plan was disseminated and cascaded to the field, putting premium on the goal that no learner will be left behind. The regional office customize a framework aligned to the components of the LCP, SMILE, which is the acronym for S, security and safety, M, modalities of learning, I, and service training, L, learning resources, and letter E for the engagement of stakeholders. First, for security and safety, since what the world experiences is a threat to everyone's health, so security and safety must be a priority. In my area as mobile teacher, the following activities were conducted. So we provided healthy food relief packs for 250 families in the islands. Another activity, we prepared brochure about the COVID and other health and safety measures. And another one requested the LGU for the approval of ALSPAN for the procurement of health, hygiene, and sanitation supplies. As to how will education continue in the midst of this pandemic, we somehow have already prepared for it. On the last week of February to first week of March, training of parents on how to teach children the basics in reading was conducted through our Project Learn. And for the implementation of the Project Lipata, which is Learning Integration Program Approach and Technology for Agriculture, they were taught on how to plant using different types in gardening. It was also timely that the vegetable production in our school was already in place through the Bayanihan sa Gulayan conducted after the training. Another activity that we provided disinfectants and sanitizers at the school, community learning center, and to our classroom entrance. And for the last activity we posted information materials reminding precautionary measures for prevention of spread of the virus to a conspicuous place in our community. As we speak of modalities of learning for the letter M, in alternative learning system, what was institutionalized is the modular distance delivery of learning. At the onset of the pandemic, other modalities were introduced like blended learning. So you have modular distance learning, radio-based instruction, the eskwela, the online distance learning, school in a bag, the Tech for Ed, and the Starbucks. We have already started the blended learning utilizing the school in a bag in partnership with the Smart Communication that contain offline materials for basic literacy and accreditation and equivalency learners. So the Department of Information and Communication Technology also provided computer package equipped with the 8 platforms cater for the 6 learning strand for ALS. And just recently, our center was a recipient of the Starbucks. This is an offline digital library where our learners will have more exposure in science and technology. Next, in service training. So we attended the webinars for teachers on the use of modular approach, blended learning in other modalities, including the use of digital platforms in the changes in the delivery of teaching learning process as a whole. This pandemic actually enhanced the competencies of the teachers. As a resilient and proactive teacher embracing the new normal in the delivery of basic education, the SDO Camarinesor organized the I Smile webinar New Normal series, where all teachers attended sessions on the different platforms like the Google Classrooms, Edmodo, and other online and offline strategies in teaching in the new normal. And personally, I joined local and international fora such as the digital conference using Starbucks, resources in designing assessment activities and remote learning, radio-based instruction, and others where I acquired additional knowledge, experience, and strategies in dealing with learners during this pandemic. For the learning resources, modules as basic in the modular distance approach are available in the learning strands of alternative learning system. Copies of modules were delivered to SDO Camarines-Sur. However, as we align to the approaches and pedagogies, we also prepare learning activity sheets for our learners. We also prepare PowerPoint presentations of our lessons to make it available to learners who have access to the technology. And the last letter for the acronym SMILE is E. This is engagement of stakeholders. So Sichulipata, the community I now call a family, has been endowed with the generosity of people I never imagined to selflessly sustain the programs, projects, and activities. They extended not only to the learners of us, but to the whole of the community. Engagement of stakeholders has been strengthened and sustained that we have. So the first stakeholder is, and our major stakeholder is the Yellow Boat of Hope Foundation that provided Bangkarunungan that started from 1 boat to 5 boats, covering the coastal and island barangays of the municipality of Caramuan. So it paved way to educating the OSY in adults, in making them eligible and for elementary and secondary graduates. Another partner is the Be a Giver. They provided us water system in the community. The Metrobank Foundation that give us the Trike of Hope, serving the upland and mountain barangays. Cebuana Lovelier gave us the digital equipment like laptop, projector, and printers. The Toy Library, Carl Balita, give us the generator, which is Sichulipata, have no access to electricity. ABCBN, the Starbucks, the ICT, and other private individuals. And one is the local government unit. The support of local government unit of Caramuan contributed much in sustaining the implementation of ALS programs and projects. So the impact of COVID-19 has significantly added to the challenges faced by the teacher and the educational system. As a teacher committed to serving the underserved, the least, and the last, and the lost, challenges like the pandemic can never stop my resilience in delivering to them the basic education learning continuity plan amidst the health crisis. Thank you, and let us heal as one. Let me end my talk with this line. Every great story starts when somebody shares and cares. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Wendell, for that comprehensive discussion of all your advocacies. And I know how hardworking you are as a ALS mobile teacher, and it takes a lot of passion to become one. And it's also good to hear that in this time of pandemic, you're able to teach and reach us learners. And we would like to congratulate you also for being a part of the top 50 finalists of the Global Teacher Prize. Congratulations, Sir Wendell.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sir Wendell. And we would like to also apologize or to indulgence to everyone. We may be finishing a little bit late, but we're on to our last and final speaker. We are saving the best for last. And for our next speaker, in this time of pandemic, not only the teachers are contributing for their learners, but also the parents. The parents place the importance in helping their children to cope with situation. Mr. Frederick Orticio, a father, will share his story or role as a parent to his son. Mr. Orticio is currently the Senior Technical Assistant of DepEd's International Cooperation Office. He studied Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy at the University of Santo Tomas and Bachelor of Laws in the University of the East. Let's all welcome Mr. Frederick Orticio. Sir Derek.
Pleasant good afternoon to all. To all the esteemed guests in this morning's webinar, to the participants watching on Facebook Live, and to my colleagues in ICO, and to our amiable director in ICO, Director Ballesteros. Good afternoon. This is just going to be a short sharing of how a parent of experiences challenges during this time of pandemic. Now we have heard the views of the teachers, some members of the academe, as well as our educators. Now it's time for us to hear the side of the parents in this unique experience. So let me just start my sharing. Okay. Now, first off, I will be defining the term literacy. Second, I'll be defining what parenting is. And then the third part would be my story as a parent to an 8-year-old boy. Now, literacy as defined by UNESCO is the ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, and compute using printed and written materials associated with varying contexts. It involves learning in enabling individuals to achieve their goals, to develop their knowledge and potential, and to participate fully in their community and wider society. In other words, it is the ability to read, to write, to speak, to spell, grammar knowledge, and the ability to listen, the ability to communicate and make sense of our world. And what is parenting? Parenting is the process of caring for children and helping them grow and learn and develop. It involves a variety of different skills, which may include the following: physical care, that part where we provide food and clothing for our children or a safe place for them to live in. Number two would be nurturing, wherein we provide love, support, attention, encouragement, and make them feel appreciated. And the third part would be guidance. This is where we teach them values of right or wrong. And this would also include the reading and writing part. Okay. Now, parenting and literacy during the pandemic. As we all know, way back March or middle of March, we experienced a lockdown, some sort of a lockdown wherein no one was allowed to leave their premises for at least the whole month of March and part of April. So there were quite a lot of challenges because during that time, my son was ending his school year. So these are his pre-COVID activities. So he goes to SPED school 3 times a week. He has a daily routine of waking up at 6 in the morning, eats breakfast, and by the time 7:30 reaches 7:30, he's on his way to school. Now, on the days that he does not have any SPED school, he goes through therapy twice a week for his occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. And on weekends, that's usually reserved for family day. We go to the mall, and on Sundays, we go to church. Now, this has suddenly changed for him and for us. So the activities during COVID, while he stays home, no outdoor activities, and he constantly looks for his classmates and teachers, which he cannot see or visit. No visits to his grandfather, and he is not allowed to go to the mall, to the park. Therefore, he gets bored easily. And his study time, initially there was no specified time, but we follow the schedule of his schooling, so we place the study time in the morning. And also, before he goes to sleep, there is the reading time. It's either with me or with my wife. So instead of just weekends being family day, every day has become a family day. And this has caused quite a confusing atmosphere at home. Usually my kid would look forward to weekends for family days, but since every day is a family day, it's kind of boring for him. So his playmates would only be just one kid, his cousin. So those are the challenges which we are facing. Now, apart from this, the change in his activity, daily living or routine has changed. Now, since he gets bored, sometimes he would do stuff for us to notice him. And well, I'm also preoccupied with work and at the same time preoccupied with family chores. So sometimes he got scolded because of the change in lifestyle. So there's also emotional adjustments for all of us, for my kid, for my wife, and for myself. So what I do is I involve my child in the daily routines which I do. Well, I cook. So what I do is I show him the methods by which I would do cooking, and I would encourage him that someday, if he is able enough to help me out, then he would also be able to help me. So kids would want to be involved in all activities, including work time for me. So there are times wherein I am reporting for work online, and he would be sitting beside me, curiously looking at the screen of the laptop and also wanting to interact. So I do not discourage that. As a matter of fact, I encourage that to some extent, of course, that he would not interfere with my work. So, in other words, during this pandemic, parents have become full-time teachers from the mere passive participants that we were pre-pandemic. So, I take this as a greatest opportunity for us to relearn our role with regard to our children, because most of the time we sort of pass the buck and just shrug off our shoulders and say, well, teaching is not for me, it's for the teachers to teach my kid. But it's not supposed to be that way. As parents, yes, we are the first teachers, but let's not just stop there. We are our kids' teachers, period. Now, what are the ways forward for us to overcome the challenges which I just mentioned? Well, what I do is if my kid does something good, whether it be extraordinary or just a mundane task, I praise him, because uh, children hearing praises from parents, it makes them feel good. It gives them confidence to do more good. And of course, I explain to them the reasons for the changes. Well, at the start of the watches this on TV, listens over the radio. So he asked me one time, what is COVID-19? So I had to explain it in such a way that he would be able to grasp it. Every time he would insist on going out, I would just tell him that we still have COVID-19 present. There is no vaccine yet. So would you want to go out still? And he would answer back, not yet. So we have to set aside and spend quality time with our child and involve them, as I mentioned a while ago, in our activities. And we must be very much willing to talk and listen to them. So I have heard of the term family literacy. It means that parents and books are quite important to our children. And we as parents are the first and most important teachers, as I mentioned a while ago, in our child's life development. Love for reading must be fostered by us parents. So what I do during our story time before he goes to bed, he would normally sit on my lap, and I would open a book, and I would be reading aloud to him about a sentence or two from that page. And I've read somewhere that the more words the children hear, the better they read, and the more they read, the better readers they become. As in one study, a 3-year-old child whose parents are non-interactive with each other listens to about 10 million words, whereas a child who lives in an environment where conversation is encouraged, he hears about 30 million words. So it's quite a big difference. So it is very important for us parents to perform our duty, and it's just the simple task that we could do for them. And one way is for us to read books for them. So we have to be creative, we have to be innovative, and we have to be consistent. Now, since my kid has ASD and he has difficulty in some perceptions, what I do is I draw lines on our garage, and I have him follow the lines, whether it be curved lines, straight lines. So in other words, we don't need to tap applications or the computer or our cell phones. Simple, usual things that we grew up with, we could share with our child for them to be able to experience the other type of learning. And as I mentioned a while ago, there is no app to replace your lap. So read to your child. So every opportunity you get, read to your children and read aloud. Set yourselves as examples. If they see us reading books, then they would be encouraged to read books as well. So nothing is more expensive than a missed opportunity. So this pandemic has given us this opportunity for us to be able to teach our children in a way that we do not pass the burden of teaching them merely to our teachers. So to parents like me, this is the best opportunity for us, and I surely hope that we will be able to grab this opportunity and uh, make our children feel that we are their teachers. So good afternoon to you, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Um, Thank you, Sir Derek, for sharing with us your role as a parent or as a father to your son before and during COVID-19. I believe that the role of a parent is very, very important, and especially in this new normal setup. Now that the learners are transitioning from the traditional setup to the online setup of classes. Uh, right, Ma'am Jamie?
Yes, Ryan. Yes, Ryan, I agree with you. For kids, and I also agree with what Sir Derek said a while ago, that our parents are the first teacher in their child's life. Okay, Ryan, you're going to say something?
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Jamie. Now, unfortunately, due to the limited time, we cannot do the question and answer portion anymore. But we can still collate all your questions. Just put in your full name and valid email address so that we can forward your questions to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And now we will proceed to the awarding of the virtual certificates. Miss Dea? Okay. Let me just read the citation of the certificates. Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, DepEd Complex, Meralco Avenue, Pasig City. This certificate of appreciation is awarded to Enrico R. Mendoza for sharing his valuable knowledge as a resource speaker during the 2020 International Literacy Day with the theme Literacy, Teaching, and Learning in the COVID-19 Crisis and Beyond, held on the 8th of September 2020 via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 8th day of September 2020, signed by Margarita Consolacion C. Ballesteros, Director 4. And the certificate will also be given to the following speakers, to Professor Shabazz Khan, Dr. Nerissa Lina Joey Tago Kalu. Next, Mr. Trust Mutekwa, to Sir Kun Timers, to Sir Francis Chin Toscano, Sir Wendell Alvarez, Mr. Ryan Homan, Sir Frederick Orticio. Okay, and now, Ryan, would you introduce our next for the closing remarks?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Jamie. Now, let's call on our director, Dr. Margarita Consolacion Ballesteros, Director 4 of the International Cooperation Office, for her closing remarks. Director Marge.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, again, let me thank you for joining us this morning from 8:30 to now. It's almost 12:30. And we thank Kun from all the way from Belgium, who joined us as well. Trust Mutekwa from Zimbabwe. Of course, our very own DepEd officials headed by USEC DADS, USEC Just Dad San Antonio, Eric Mendoza of LCC, of course, Frederick from ICO, and our Pride, Wendell, Jim, Ryan, and of course, our good friend and colleague all the way from the State Department of Education in New York. Thank you for joining us. To our friends from the different ministries in Southeast Asia who viewed us on Facebook, and they have been sending messages on WhatsApp and on Messenger. Thank you for joining us and for the support. To Dr. Shabazz Khan and his team in UNESCO office of Jakarta, and to, of course, our good friends from Bangladesh, Nepal, Cambodia, India, Australia, Canada, and Vietnam, and of course, Indonesia, who joined us. Thank you. And to our regional directors who viewed us on Facebook Live and those who joined us on Zoom, especially Director Gemma Ledesma of Region 6 and her team. Thank you, ma'am. I will not read my one-page prepared closing remarks, but I will just summarize in one statement or in one sentence what the guys, our speakers, have shared this morning. And that is, again, I will repeat and will say it from time to time. Even before the pandemic and now with the pandemic that we are all in, we are all facing, and we are all struggling. So as we survive not only as individuals, but with our peers, colleagues in the department, especially our kids, our learners who we serve, it is with the community and technology that will make them learn and that will make them literate the more. So friends, thank you again for joining us. To our friends of the DepEd Philippines who supported us, and those who actually joined us not only Facebook Live, not only on Zoom, but who joined us spiritually, who prayed for us and who have been praying for us and with us. Thank you. On behalf of the Secretary of Education, Secretary Liling Magtolis Briones, and our bosses, Yusek Nepomuceno Malaluan and Yusek Jess Mateo, this is Director Marge thanking you for the support, and let's all have a good afternoon and a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Marge, for that wonderful message. And we have some few reminders for all participants. We know that everyone is hungry right now, but this is the last reminder. And this is for your certificate. So how to get your e-certificates, remember, the link to the feedback form will be posted in the chat box. And for our Facebook page, the link for this one will be posted also in our DepEd ICO Facebook page. And we have here the link. I hope that you could read it and you can copy. And so we also have a QR code. And thank you very much again for everyone for joining us in our forum for today. Thank you and God bless and stay safe. Goodbye, everyone.
Imagine not being able to read during a pandemic and miss out on life-saving information. Today, this is the case for at least 773 million adults and young people around the world who lack basic literacy skills. Globally, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted education, affecting 91% of students and 63 million teachers. While efforts have been made to continue education through distance learning, youth and adult literacy programs have mostly been suspended. This is a stark reminder of the fragile state of literacy learning. This needs to change. To leverage the transformative power of literacy, we need to prioritize quality teaching and learning. We need to invest in educators so they can adapt teaching to various conditions. We need to build robust learning systems so that literacy programs throughout life are resilient. Together, we can use the time of crisis to reimagine literacy teaching and learning. On International Literacy Day, let's step up the collective efforts and commit to making literacy teaching and learning a priority so that no one is left behind.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ako po si Sadat Buisan Minandang, guro ng Amerol Elementary School, Cotabato City. Bilang isang guro, nag-iisip ako ng mga makabagong pamamaraan upang matulungan ang mga bata na nakakasalamuha ko araw-araw. Sa loob man ng aking klase, mga bata sa paaralan at mga bata sa komunidad na animoy uhaw sa kaalaman para maitawid ang kanilang lakbay buhay. Ipinakilala ko sa komunidad ang aking proyektong Tulak Kaalaman noong 2017. Ang Tulak Kaalaman ay mayroong tatlong mahalagang advokasiyang pang-edukasyon. Ang Literacy and Numeracy Program, ang Education in Emergency or EIE, ang pangatlo ay ang advokasya ng Water, Hygiene and Sanitation. Nariyan din ang proteksyon at pagpapamulat sa kanilang bawat karapatan. Inilunsad ko naman ang programang Faith Malu. Malu, maayos ang laging may ugnayan. Layunin ng programa ang magkaisa at magkasundo ang bawat mamamayan at magkaroon ng takot sa Diyos sa pamamagitan ng Islamikong pagtitipon at pakikinig sa mga aral at salita ng Panginoon mula sa mga skolar. Inshaallah, ang karangalan at pagpapakilala na ibibigay sa akin ay gagawin kong inspirasyon upang patuloy na maglingkod sa kabataan, paaralan, komunidad at sa buong rehiyon. Maraming salamat po.